Ambassador Lee Minho walked through the long halls of the Galactic Council station. His simple gray suit made him look like any other peaceful diplomat. Around him, beings from across the galaxy moved with purpose. Some had 4 arms, others had scales that changed color, and a few floated in clear bubbles filled with strange gas. But none of them paid much attention to the quiet human from Terra 3. That was exactly what Minho wanted. The council chamber was huge. It could hold 10,000 beings, and today it was almost full. Representatives from hundreds of worlds sat in their special seats, each designed for their particular species. The humans had a small section near the back which was perfect for staying out of sight. Minho took his seat next to Captain Park Yuna. She wore the simple blue uniform of Terra 3's merchant fleet. Her ship, the Harmony, was docked at the station's outer ring with dozens of other small trading vessels. To anyone watching, it looked like a basic cargo ship from a farming world. "Any problems with the docking?" Minho asked quietly. "None at all," Yuna replied. "The station guards barely looked at our cargo manifest. They saw agricultural supplies and waved us through." Dr. Kim Jisoo joined them, carrying a tablet full of trade reports. She was Terra 3's cultural liaison, which meant she spent her time talking to other species about crop yields and farming techniques. It was boring work, but it kept everyone thinking humans were simple farmers. The chamber grew quiet as Council Speaker Veltar rose from the central platform. The crystalline being's body caught the light and threw rainbow patterns across the walls. When Veltar spoke, the sound came from vibrations in the crystal structure, creating a voice like singing wind chimes. "Today we discuss the expansion of trade routes in the Outer Rim territories," Veltar announced. "The hegemony has requested permission to increase patrol activity in sectors 7 through 12. Minho felt his jaw tighten. The hegemony was trouble. They were a military alliance led by Admiral Torkan, a reptilian being who believed that strength was the only thing that mattered in the galaxy. For months, hegemony ships had been pushing into areas where human merchants traveled. Admiral Torkan stood up in the hegemony section. His dark green scales rippled as he moved, and his yellow eyes swept across the chamber. "The Outer Rim is full of pirates and criminals," he said in his deep, rumbling voice. "Peaceful species need our protection. We offer this service freely to all law-abiding worlds." Several representatives nodded in agreement. The hegemony was strong, and many smaller worlds were happy to have their protection. But Minho knew what protection really meant. It meant hegemony ships would control all trade in those sectors. It meant other species would have to follow hegemony rules or face their weapons. "Terra 3 objects to this proposal," Minho said, standing up. His voice was calm and measured, the way a farmer might speak when discussing weather patterns. The chamber turned to look at him. Many representatives seemed surprised that the quiet humans were speaking up. Admiral Torkan's eyes focused on Minho like a predator studying prey. "The Outer Rim has been peaceful for years," Minho continued. "Our merchant ships travel those routes regularly. We have seen no evidence of increased pirate activity. Perhaps the hegemony's concern is unnecessary." Torkan's scales darkened with anger. "Terra 3 operates small cargo ships with minimal protection. You would not know real threats if you saw them. Your people are farmers, not warriors. You do not understand how dangerous the galaxy can be." "You are correct," Minho replied. "We are farmers. We grow food and trade with our neighbors. We prefer peaceful solutions to all problems, but we also know our trade routes. Our ships have traveled safely in the Outer Rim for 50 years. We see no reason for increased military presence." Other representatives began to murmur among themselves. The debate continued for hours, with various species taking sides. Some supported the hegemony's military approach. Others agreed with Terra 3's peaceful stance. In the end, the council decided to delay the decision for more study. As the session ended, Minho gathered his papers slowly. He could feel Admiral Torkan watching him from across the chamber. The reptilian's yellow eyes held a promise of future trouble. "He doesn't like us," Yuna whispered. "No, he doesn't," Minho agreed. "But that's not our biggest problem. Our biggest problem is making sure he never finds out who we really are." Dr. Jisoo looked worried. "The trade route restrictions will hurt our merchant operations. And if hegemony ships start boarding our vessels for safety inspections, they might see things they shouldn't see," Minho finished. "I know. We'll have to be more careful." The 3 humans left the chamber together, walking slowly like tired diplomats after a long day. But Minho's mind was racing. For 50 years, Earth had maintained its cover as Terra 3, a peaceful agricultural world. Their ships looked simple on the outside, their technology appeared primitive, and their representatives always spoke of peace and cooperation. It was all a lie. Behind the peaceful facade, Earth was something else entirely. Something that would terrify every species in the galaxy if they knew the truth. But that truth had to stay hidden, no matter what Admiral Torkan suspected. Back on the Harmony, Captain Yuna sealed the ship's doors and activated privacy screens. "How long do you think we can keep this up?" she asked. Minho looked out at the stars through the ship's small window. Somewhere out there, past the outer rim, human colonies were building new lives on distant worlds. They depended on Earth's protection, but that protection only worked if nobody knew it existed. "As long as we have to," he said. "The galaxy isn't ready for the truth about Terra 3. Maybe it never will be." Dr. Jisoo checked her tablet. "I'm getting reports from our merchants in the outer rim. Hegemony ships have been asking questions about our cargo manifests. They're getting suspicious. Then we'll have to give them other things to worry about," Minho said. "Contact Earth. Tell them we may need to adjust our profile. More farming equipment, maybe some livestock transports. Make us look even more boring than before." "And if that doesn't work?" Yuna asked. Minho was quiet for a long moment. Through the ship's hull, he could hear the distant sounds of the station's daily operations. Thousands of beings going about their business, trading goods, making deals, solving problems with words instead of weapons. It was a peaceful galaxy mostly, a galaxy that had grown and developed over thousands of years without fear. "Then we'll have to hope Admiral Torkan doesn't push too hard," he said finally. "Because if he does, he might learn that some farmers know how to fight back." The Harmony undocked from the station a few hours later, heading back toward the outer rim with a cargo hold full of agricultural supplies. To any watching ships, it looked like another routine trade mission from the peaceful world of Terra 3. But Captain Yuna had orders in her personal safe that no Galactic Council member had ever seen. Orders that would change everything if the peaceful deception ever failed. Dr. Kim Jisoo packed her research equipment carefully. The joint expedition to Xerion Prime was supposed to be routine scientific work, but nothing felt routine anymore. 3 weeks had passed since the council session, and hegemony ships were everywhere in the outer rim. "Remember, you're just a cultural specialist," Dr. Song Hana said as she helped load the transport. Song was officially listed as a civilian researcher, but Jisoo knew better. The woman's knowledge of military history was too detailed, her observations too sharp. She was Earth's insurance policy, hidden among the real scientists. "Agricultural cultural specialist," Jisoo corrected. "I study how different species farm their food." "Very boring stuff." Commander Chojiwan checked the manifest one more time. His team of 6 humans were all listed as research assistants and equipment technicians. Their real specialties were kept carefully hidden from the other expedition members. The transport ship's scientific endeavor was crowded with researchers from 12 different species. Everyone was excited about the ruins on Xerion Prime. The ancient civilization that built them had vanished thousands of years ago, leaving behind only empty cities and mysterious technology. Most species called them the Destroyers because of the massive weapons found at their sites. But no one knew who they really were or why they had disappeared so completely. Archivist Quendal was the expedition leader. The 8-limbed being moved through the ship like a spider, checking on each research team. When Quendal reached the humans, all 8 eyes focused on them with interest. "Terra 3 specialists," Quendal said in the clicking language that needed a translator. "Your people have never joined a destroyer site expedition before. What makes Xerion Prime special?" "Agricultural interests," Jisoo replied smoothly. "Some of the ruins show evidence of large-scale food production. We want to learn about ancient farming techniques." Quendal's eyes blinked in sequence, which meant confusion in their species. The destroyers were warriors, not farmers. Their ruins contain weapons and military installations. "Every civilization needs food," Song Hana added. "Even warriors have to eat. We're hoping to find storage areas or processing facilities." The answer seemed to satisfy Quendal, who moved on to check other teams. But Jisoo noticed how Song's explanation came too quickly, too confidently. A real agricultural specialist would have been more uncertain about what they might find. Xerion Prime was a dead world. Its atmosphere was still breathable, but no cities remained active. The ruins covered an entire continent, spreading out in patterns that made Jisu's heart race. She had seen these layouts before, in classified files that supposedly didn't exist. The expedition set up base camp near the largest structure, a massive complex that reached deep underground. Other teams spread out to examine different sections, but the humans stayed together, officially to study food storage areas. "This is wrong," Song whispered as they descended into the complex. "These aren't storage areas. This is a command center." Jisu knew she was right. The layout was too familiar. The defensive positions, the communication arrays, the strategic overview chambers, everything matched human military doctrine. Not current human doctrine, but something older. Something that felt like coming home to a place you'd never been. Commander Cho's team worked quickly, using their research equipment to take detailed scans of the installations. What they were really doing was mapping defensive systems and tactical networks that other species couldn't recognize. "The main command chamber is this way," Cho said, reading from his scanner. But he wasn't following the device's display. He was following instincts that seemed to know where important rooms should be located. Archivist Quendall found them 3 hours later, standing in a vast chamber filled with tactical displays. The screens were dead, but their arrangement told a story of coordinated military operations across multiple star systems. "Fascinating," Quendall clicked. "This appears to be some kind of planning room. Perhaps they planned their agricultural distribution from here." Song Hana stepped forward before anyone else could speak. "Yes, agricultural distribution," she said. "You can see how the displays are arranged to show multiple locations. They must have coordinated food shipments across their territory." But as she spoke, Song pointed to specific features of the room. "This central display would show overall distribution patterns. These smaller screens would track individual convoy, individual shipment routes, and this raised platform would be where the Supreme Coordinator, the head farmer, would direct operations." Quendall's 8 eyes blinked rapidly. "You seem very knowledgeable about their systems. How can you tell so much from empty displays?" Jisu felt cold sweat on her back. Song was giving away too much information. Her military expertise was showing through the agricultural cover story. "Dr. Song studied similar ruins on other worlds," Jisu said quickly. "She's developed theories about how ancient civilizations organized their resource distribution." "Interesting theories," Quendall replied. "I would like to hear more about these other ruins." Before Song could answer, Commander Cho's communication device buzzed with an emergency signal. He stepped away to take the call, speaking in low tones. When he returned, his face was pale. "We need to return to base camp immediately," he said. "There's been an incident in the Outer Rim." The message from Ambassador Lee Minho was brief but terrifying. Hegemony forces had attacked the human colony on New Sol. The settlement had gone silent after sending one final transmission. "They came without warning. Send help to New Sol, tell Earth. Tell them we held the line." Jisu stared at the message on her personal device. New Sol had 12,000 colonists, families who had traveled to the Outer Rim to build new lives, protected by the fiction that Terra 3 was too peaceful to threaten anyone. "What do we do now?" Song asked quietly. Commander Cho was already packing their equipment. "We maintain the mission profile. Agricultural specialists studying ancient farming techniques. Nothing more." But Jisu could see the anger in his eyes. She could see it in Song's face too, and in the way the other team members moved. They were fighting not to show their true nature. Back at base camp, news of the attack spread quickly among the expedition members. Most species expressed sympathy for Terra 3's loss. Some offered condolences for the farmers who had died. Admiral Torkan's official statement called it a regrettable incident caused by colonial resistance to legitimate security operations. The hegemony claimed the colonists had fired first. Jisu knew that was a lie. New Sol had been a peaceful settlement, established under Galactic Council guidelines. But the colonists were not helpless farmers. If they had truly held the line against a hegemony attack force, it meant they had revealed capabilities that Terra 3 wasn't supposed to have. That night, as the expedition settled down for sleep, Jisu received another message. This one was from Earth, transmitted through channels that officially didn't exist. Authorization requested for Protocol 7. Jisu stared at the message for a long time. Protocol 7 was the end of everything they had built over 50 years. It was the end of the peaceful deception, the end of Terra 3's simple agricultural image. She typed her response carefully. Recommend extreme caution. Expedition may reveal complications. The reply came back within minutes. Understood. Maintain cover as long as possible. Authorization stands. Then came one more message, just a single word. Granted. Jisoo deleted all the messages and lay down in her sleeping bag, but sleep wouldn't come. Around her, the ruins of Xerion Prime stretched into the darkness. Ancient corridors and command chambers built by a civilization that had vanished completely. She thought about Song Hana's too accurate descriptions of the tactical displays. She thought about Commander Cho's instinctive knowledge of the complex's layout. She thought about how familiar everything felt. As if humans had been here before, as if humans had built these places. The next morning brought word that Earth's rescue fleet was already moving toward New Seoul. Ambassador, Minho's official statement called it a humanitarian mission with minimal defensive capability. But Jisoo knew better. She had seen the real fleet specifications in classified briefings. What was heading toward New Seoul wasn't a rescue mission. It was the revelation of everything Terra 3 had pretended not to be. She watched archivist Quendal studying the ruins with new intensity, taking detailed scans of the tactical displays that Song had described too well. The eight-limbed being was beginning to ask the right questions. Questions that would soon have answers the galaxy wasn't prepared to hear. Admiral Kang Donghyun stood on the bridge of the Soul's Vengeance as his fleet dropped out of hyperspace above New Seoul. Around him, the Earth Defense Fleet emerged from the darkness like awakening giants. The ships that appeared were not the small trading vessels the galaxy expected from Terra 3. These were massive dreadnoughts, their hulls black as space itself, bristling with weapons that had been hidden for 50 years. The Soul's Vengeance, Busan's Fury, Incheon's Pride, and a dozen others formed a battle formation that spoke of centuries of tactical development. Report, Donghyun ordered. Captain Lim Nari's voice came through from her fighter escort. Colony is secured, Admiral. Hegemony ground forces eliminated. Civilian casualties. Significant, sir. Donghyun closed his eyes for a moment. The colonists of New Seoul had indeed held the line, but the cost had been terrible. 3,000 dead, including entire families. Children who would never grow up because Admiral Torkan wanted to test Terra 3's defenses. Hegemony fleet positions? He asked. 12 ships holding position at the system's edge, his tactical officer reported. They appear to be in shock, sir. They're not moving to engage. Of course they weren't moving. The Hegemony commanders had expected to face a few agricultural ships attempting a desperate rescue. Instead, they were looking at a military force that could destroy their entire fleet without breaking formation. General Hwang Kyung-jae's image appeared on the main screen. The Supreme Commander of Earth's military forces looked tired, but his voice was steady. Admiral, you are authorized to demonstrate the full extent of our capabilities. The time for hiding is over. Understood, sir. Donghyun turned to his weapons officer. Signal the fleet. Show them what human engineering can do. The display that followed was not a battle. It was a demonstration of technology that the galaxy had never seen. The Earth ships moved through space with impossible grace, their engines creating no visible exhaust, their hulls shifting in ways that seemed to bend light itself. The Hegemony fleet tried to flee. Their ships were fast, built for quick strikes and rapid withdrawal. But human ships were faster, much faster. Captain Lim Nari led the fighter squadron in a pursuit that became legendary across the galaxy. Her ship, the Taeguk, caught up with fleeing Hegemony vessels and disabled them with precision strikes that targeted engines and weapons, while leaving life support intact. Remember, Donghyun broadcast to his fleet, we are not conquerors today. We are protectors. Disable, don't destroy. But the message he was really sending was to the galaxy itself. Every sensor array within 50 light-years was recording the engagement. Military analysts on 100 worlds were watching as Terra 3's agricultural fleet performed maneuvers that defied everything. They thought they knew about human capabilities. Colonel Yoon Siwoo led the ground, forces that secured New Seoul's survivors. His Marines moved through the colony with equipment that looked nothing like farming tools. Their armor was sleek and powerful, their weapons fired with surgical precision, and their tactics spoke of military training that went far beyond anything a peaceful species should possess. Colony secure. Siwoo reported. All hegemony ground forces neutralized or captured. We're beginning evacuation of civilian survivors. The evacuation itself sent another message to watching sensors. Human ships that had looked like simple cargo vessels revealed internal configurations designed for military transport. Medical facilities that could handle mass casualties. Command centers that could coordinate complex operations across multiple star systems. On Zerion Prime, Dr. Kim Ji-soo watched the news broadcasts with growing dread. The expedition's communications array was picking up signals from across the galaxy as the story spread. The peaceful farmers of Terra 3 had just revealed themselves as something else entirely. This changes everything, Archivist Quendal said, all 8 eyes focused on the tactical displays. The ancient ruins suddenly seemed to make more sense. The destroyers were not just warriors. They were humans. Dr. Song Hana no longer bothered to hide her military expertise. Not just humans, she said quietly. Our ancestors. Commander Cho was receiving new orders through encrypted channels. The need for secrecy was over. Protocol 7 had been activated across all human operations in the galaxy. Professor Baek Minji's image appeared on every major news network simultaneously. Earth's leading xenoarchaeologist stood in front of displays showing comparative technology scans. Ancient destroyer weapons next to modern human designs. Tactical layouts from 50,000-year-old ruins matched with current Earth Defense Fleet manuals. The civilization you call the destroyers never truly vanished. Beck explained to a galaxy-wide audience. They withdrew. They chose isolation over continued expansion. They became the world you know as Terra 3. The revelation sent shockwaves through every civilization. Species that had traded peacefully with Terra 3 for 50 years suddenly realized they had been dealing with the descendants of the galaxy's most powerful ancient empire. Emergency sessions were called on every major world. Military commanders studied the recordings of the new Sol engagement, trying to understand technology that seemed impossible. Diplomatic corps scrambled to reassess every interaction they'd ever had with human representatives. Admiral Torkan's fleet limped back to hegemony space, their ships disabled but intact. The message was clear. Humans could have destroyed them completely but had chosen mercy instead. It was a demonstration of power wrapped in restraint, and it terrified hegemony leadership more than any show of force could have. They've been watching us, Admiral Torkan reported to the hegemony high command. Everything we've done, every expansion, every military operation, they've been monitoring it all. They could have stopped us at any time. Back on the Sol's Vengeance, Admiral Donghyun received reports from across human space. Hidden monitoring stations were revealing themselves. Survey ships that had operated in stealth for decades were dropping their cloaking fields. The infrastructure of 50,000 years of careful observation was becoming visible to galactic sensors. Admiral, his communications officer called out, we're receiving messages from governments across the galaxy. Requests for meetings, demands for explanations, threats of military action, and offers of alliance. Route all diplomatic communications to Ambassador Jung Woojin, Donghyun replied. He'll handle the transition period. The transition period. That was what Earth's leadership was calling this moment when humanity stepped out of the shadows. 50 years of careful deception were ending, replaced by something that would change galactic politics forever. Fleet Admiral Moon Hisu's strategic deterrent fleet was already moving into position around key systems. Not to attack, but to protect. The same way they had been protecting the galaxy for millennia, but now openly instead of from the shadows. Sir, Captain Limnari reported from her fighter. We're detecting massive fleet movements across hegemony space. They're mobilizing everything they have. Expected, Donghyun replied. They're scared. They don't know if we're here to protect or conquer. Which are we here to do, sir? Donghyun looked out at the stars where new Sol survivors were being transferred to safety aboard human ships. Children who had lost parents. Parents who had lost children. A peaceful colony destroyed because one species thought strength was the only thing that mattered. Both, he said finally. We're here to protect those who need protection. And if that means conquering those who threaten the innocent, then that's what we'll do. The galaxy would spend the next few days trying to understand what had happened, how a species of peaceful farmers had revealed themselves as the inheritors of the most advanced military technology ever seen, how the destroyers had returned not as conquerors, but as something more complex. Dr. Jisoo stood in the ancient command chamber on Zerion Prime. Looking at tactical displays that her ancestors had built 50,000 years ago, she finally understood why everything felt familiar. This wasn't just a ruin left by vanished aliens, this was home. Professor Baikminji stood before the largest audience in galactic history. Representatives from every known species watched as she prepared to reveal the truth that would reshape their understanding of the universe. Behind her, holographic displays showed archaeological evidence from 100 worlds, ruins that had been studied for thousands of years, all bearing the same architectural patterns, the same technological signatures, the same strategic thinking. 50,000 years ago, Beck began, her voice carrying across countless worlds through quantum communication networks. Humanity achieved faster than light travel. We were young, aggressive, and convinced that our way of life was the best way for everyone. The images changed to show ancient star maps. Human expansion routes spreading across the galaxy like growing roots, connecting system after system in a network of colonies and trading posts. We called ourselves explorers, but we were conquerors. We brought human technology, human culture, human solutions to every world we found. We believed we were helping the galaxy advance, but we were really forcing it to become more like us. Ambassador Yongwu Jin watched from Earth's orbital command center as reactions poured in from across the galaxy. Some species were fascinated by the historical revelations. Others were angry about being deceived for 50 years. Many were simply afraid. The beings you call the destroyers were not destroying civilizations, Beck continued. They were destroying independence. Every world that joined the human empire became more human and less itself. Local cultures faded. Unique technologies were replaced with human designs. Individual species' ways of thinking were overwhelmed by human logic. Dr. Oh Seung-ho joined the presentation, his expertise in evolutionary biology helping to explain humanity's development. Humans evolved as persistence hunters on a dangerous world. We developed technology to solve problems through overwhelming force and careful planning. These traits served us well in space, but they made us terrible neighbors. The displays showed reconstructed images of ancient human cities on dozens of worlds. Massive structures built to human scale, using human aesthetics designed around human needs, beautiful in their own way but completely alien to the species who had lived there before. We realized what we were doing, Beck said, her voice heavy with inherited guilt. Our greatest leaders looked at what our empire had become and saw that we were becoming the very thing we had originally fought against, oppressors who forced their will on others. On Zerion Prime, Dr. Kim Ji-soo walked through command chambers that suddenly made perfect sense. Every corridor, every room placement, every defensive position followed human military doctrine because humans had designed them. The familiar feeling wasn't déjà vu. It was genetic memory recognizing home. The choice our ancestors made was unprecedented, Beck continued. An empire at the height of its power chose to give up that power voluntarily. They began the Great Withdrawal, abandoning colonies, destroying weapons, erasing records of their expansion. Commander Cho's team had dropped all pretense of being agricultural researchers. They worked openly now, cataloging military installations that their own species had built and abandoned. Each discovery added to the growing picture of humanity's forgotten empire. But they did not simply vanish, Dr. O added. They chose to become guardians instead of rulers, hidden observers instead of obvious controllers. They retreated to Earth and began the longest surveillance mission in galactic history. Fleet Admiral Moon Hee-su's ships were positioned at key points throughout human space, but their weapons remained powered down. This was not a show of force, but a demonstration of restraint. The same restraint their ancestors had shown when they chose withdrawal over continued conquest. For 50,000 years, humans have watched the galaxy develop, Beck explained. They intervened only when extinction-level threats emerged. Asteroid impacts that would have destroyed civilizations were quietly deflected. Plagues that could have wiped out entire species found mysterious cures appearing just in time. Wars that might have escalated to galactic destruction were subtly prevented. The evidence was overwhelming. Ancient records from dozens of species mentioned mysterious interventions during their darkest hours. Unknown ships appearing to help during disasters, then vanishing without explanation. Technologies that appeared suddenly during crucial moments. Advanced enough to solve immediate problems, but simple enough to be understood and replicated. We were never truly alone, concluded Speaker Veltar of the Galactic Council, addressing the assembled representatives. The gardeners were always watching, making sure we had room to grow. But not everyone was grateful for the revelation. Admiral Torkin of the Hegemony broadcast his own response from their heavily fortified homeworld. 50,000 years of lies, he declared to his followers. 50,000 years of manipulation. They let us believe we were free while controlling every aspect of our development. This is not protection. This is the most sophisticated form of slavery ever devised. His words found support among other militaristic factions across the galaxy. Species that had built their identities around strength and independence felt humiliated to learn they had been protected like children. Director Shin Ga-young addressed these concerns directly from Earth's capital. Our ancestors made mistakes, she admitted. They were too controlling, too convinced that their way was the only way. But they learned from those mistakes. The galaxy we protected was allowed to develop its own cultures, its own technologies, its own solutions to problems. Professor Bayek displayed comparison charts showing technological development across different species. Each had followed unique paths, developed distinctive approaches to science and engineering. Human intervention had been minimal and carefully targeted. We didn't give you our technology, Beck explained. We made sure you had the freedom to develop your own. The diversity you see in galactic civilization today exists because our ancestors chose restraint over control. On the archaeological expedition, archivist Quendal made a discovery that added weight to humanity's claims. Deep in the Zirian Prime complex, hidden beneath layers of military installations, they found something unexpected. These are not weapons, Quendal announced. All 8 eyes focused on ancient displays. These are conservation records. The destroyers were cataloging and preserving the cultures of every species they encountered. Dr. Song Hana, no longer pretending to be just an agricultural specialist, helped translate the ancient human records. They knew what they were destroying, she said quietly. Every poem, every song, every unique way of thinking that was being lost to human expansion. They recorded it all. The preservation archives stretched for kilometers underground. Millions of cultural artifacts from species that had been absorbed into the human empire, carefully stored and maintained for 50,000 years. Art, literature, music, scientific theories, philosophical traditions, everything that made each species unique. They planned to give it all back, Song realized. When they withdrew from the galaxy, they intended to return these cultures to their surviving populations. But most of those populations were gone, absorbed into human civilization or extinct from other causes. The archives had become a monument to lost diversity, a reminder of the cost of unchecked expansion. Dr. Jizoo found herself crying as she walked through the cultural preservation chambers. Her ancestors had tried to save what they were destroying, but they had been too late for most of it. The guilt of an entire species was stored in these quiet halls. This is why they chose isolation, she whispered. They couldn't bear what they had done. The revelation changed everything about how the galaxy viewed the returned humans. They were not proud conquerors revealing their strength, but penitent guardians trying to atone for ancient mistakes. Speaker Veltar called for an emergency session of the Galactic Council. For the first time in 50 years, Terra 3's representatives would not be sitting in the back row, pretending to be simple farmers. Ambassador Young Woo Jin would address the galaxy as what he really was, the voice of humanity's most powerful civilization, seeking not to rule but to serve. But first, he would have to convince a frightened galaxy that the species that had once conquered them now truly wanted to protect them. The evidence was in the archives of Zirion Prime, in the careful interventions of 50 millennia, in the restraint shown at New Sol. But evidence and trust were different things, and trust once broken would take time to rebuild. Director Shin Ga-young stood at the viewing window of Earth's orbital assembly station, watching ships arrive from across the galaxy. Never before had so many different species gathered in one place. The sight would have been impossible just weeks ago, when Earth was still known as the peaceful farming world of Terra 3. Now representatives from hundreds of civilizations approached the blue and green planet that had been the center of galactic civilization 50,000 years ago. Some came in friendship, others in fear, and many simply in curiosity about the world that had shaped their history from the shadows. The Hegemony fleet is holding position at the system's edge, Admiral Park Minseo reported. They're not responding to our communications, but they're not approaching either. Admiral Torkan is waiting to see what happens here, Shin replied. He'll make his decision based on how the other species react to our proposal. Dr. John Tae-hyung, Earth's new chief of interstellar relations, joined them at the window. The preliminary responses have been mixed. The smaller worlds are interested in protection agreements. The larger empires want technology sharing, and everyone wants to know how much human oversight they'll have to accept. That's the key question, isn't it? Shin said. How do we protect without controlling? How do we help without dominating? The answer would come in the new covenant, humanity's proposal for a new relationship with the galaxy. Unlike the empire their ancestors had built through conquest, this would be built through voluntary cooperation. Captain Ko Yaren led the ceremonial escort that guided visiting delegations to the orbital station. Her squadron of human fighters flew alongside ships of every conceivable design, from the crystal vessels of Veltar's people to the bioships grown by aquatic species. Each delegation received the same welcome, a tour of Earth's orbital facilities that demonstrated both human technological advancement and their commitment to peaceful purposes. The massive defense platforms were clearly visible, but so were the agricultural stations and research facilities. We could destroy any fleet in the galaxy, Admiral Park explained to the visiting delegations. But look what we choose to build instead. The agricultural stations were larger than most species' capital ships, designed to feed entire worlds during emergencies. The research facilities studied not weapons development, but ecological restoration, disease prevention, and disaster relief. When Speaker Veltar's delegation toured the Cultural Preservation Archives, the crystalline being's harmonic voice carried new respect. You kept everything, Veltar observed. Every song, every story, every unique way of thinking that your ancestors absorbed. You preserved it all. We couldn't bring back the civilizations we had changed, Dr. Jeon explained. But we could make sure their contributions to galactic culture were never truly lost. The archives were open to any species that wanted to reclaim their ancestral knowledge. Already, several civilizations had found preserved technologies and cultural practices that had been lost for millennia. But not everyone was impressed by humanity's peaceful gestures. When the formal assembly began, Admiral Torkan finally broke his silence. Words and displays mean nothing, the hegemony leader declared via transmission. You speak of protection and cooperation, but you are still the species that conquered half the galaxy. You still have the power to do it again. Director Shin faced the assembled representatives directly. Admiral Torkan is correct. We do have that power. The question is not whether we can conquer the galaxy. We proved that 50,000 years ago. The question is whether we choose to. The new covenant was simple in concept but revolutionary in practice. Humanity would openly take its place in galactic affairs, not as rulers, but as protectors. They would share selected technologies to help defend against external threats. Earth would serve as neutral ground for conflict resolution. The human fleet would protect trade routes and respond to genuine emergential threats. In exchange, member species would commit to principles of non-aggression and mutual development. No member could attack another member. All species would contribute to joint defense against external threats, and all would work together to help developing civilizations advance without losing their unique characteristics. This is not an empire, Shin explained. This is a partnership. We offer our strength to protect your freedom to be yourselves. The proposal sparked intense debate among the delegates. Some species embraced the idea immediately. Others wanted modifications to the terms. A few rejected it entirely, preferring to maintain their independence without any human involvement. What happens to those who refuse? Asked the delegate from the Outer Systems Coalition. Nothing, Shin replied. You continue as you are. We will not force anyone to join the covenant. But we also cannot guarantee protection for those who choose to remain outside it. It was a careful balance. The covenant offered real benefits: technological assistance, mutual defense, conflict resolution, but it required real commitments in return. Species that joined would give up their right to wage aggressive war, but they would gain security and support. Admiral Torkin saw the hesitation among some delegates and made his move. A hegemony strike force suddenly appeared near the orbital station, weapons powered and targeting systems active. "This is exactly what I expected," Torkin transmitted to the assembly. "The humans speak of choice, but they surround us with weapons. They offer partnership, but from a position of overwhelming force." The attack came without further warning. Hegemony ships opened fire on the station, betting that humanity would not risk civilian casualties by fighting back effectively. They were wrong about the civilian casualties, right about humanity fighting back. The defense of Earth was not handled by massive fleet actions or overwhelming firepower. Instead, ancient systems that had protected the galaxy for 50,000 years activated simultaneously across dozens of star systems. Automated defense platforms that had hidden in asteroid fields for millennia revealed themselves. Monitoring stations that had observed galactic development suddenly became active weapons platforms. The invisible infrastructure of humanity's long watch materialized all at once. Admiral Torkin's fleet found themselves surrounded not by the ships at Earth, but by defensive systems they had never known existed. Systems that could have destroyed them at any point in their history, but had chosen to remain hidden. "This is what true power looks like," Admiral Park transmitted to the hegemony forces. "Not the ability to attack, but the ability to protect. Your ships are disabled, but your crews are alive. Your weapons are offline, but your life support continues to function." The demonstration lasted less than 10 minutes. The hegemony strike. Force was completely neutralized without a single death on either side. It was a show of surgical precision that impressed even the most skeptical delegates. "How long have these systems been watching us?" asked one delegate in awe. "Since the beginning," Director Shin replied. "Every space lane, every trading post, every colony in this sector has been under our protection for 50,000 years. The only difference now is that you know about it." The vote on the new covenant was overwhelming. Species after species chose to join the partnership, attracted by the combination of protection and autonomy it offered. Even some who had been skeptical changed their minds after seeing how completely humanity could have controlled them, but chose not to. Admiral Torkin's fleet was released unharmed, but the hegemony leader himself requested a private meeting with Director Shin. "You could have destroyed us completely," he admitted. "Why didn't you?" "Because destruction is easy," Shin replied. "Building something better is hard. We've learned that lesson the hard way." The signing ceremony took place on Earth's surface, in a vast amphitheater built specifically for the occasion. Representatives from over 300 species gathered to mark the beginning of a new era in galactic civilization. Ambassador Lee Minho, no longer hiding behind a facade of agricultural interests, signed as Earth's first official representative to the expanded Galactic Council. Captain Park Yuna was promoted to admiral and given command of the new Galactic Protection Fleet, a joint force combining human ships with volunteer vessels from allied species. Dr. Kim Jisoo established the Institute for Galactic Development, where human knowledge and galactic wisdom would combine to tackle the great challenges facing the galaxy: resource scarcity, external threats from beyond the galactic rim, and the philosophical questions of how advanced civilizations should interact with developing ones. The final moment came when Director Shin activated Earth's new role as the galaxy's neutral ground. The planet's defensive systems were placed under joint control, ensuring that no single species, not even humanity, could use Earth as a base for conquest. "We offer you our strength," Shin said to the assembled delegates, "but we place it under your collective oversight. This is how partnerships should work." As the ceremony concluded, Director Shin stood once again at the viewing window of the orbital station. The galaxy spread out before her, no longer hidden from human eyes, no longer protected by deception and shadows. Ships from dozens of species traveled safely through space lanes that were now openly protected by the descendants of the destroyers. Trade flowed freely between worlds that had chosen cooperation over conflict.